Okay, confession time. The reason I picked Strong Arms of the Maw to review is because I actually kinda like it. It's an episode I look forward to when rewatching the middle seasons. But I also hate it. I hate what it becomes and how close they got to being something truly special. It's like this beautiful train wreck of an episode that I can't stop looking at. I feel like this episode is special and unique because it's one of the rare cases where something truly bad happens to one of the characters. The show usually avoids plots like these, since such heavy subject matter can weigh down the comedy. But Strong Arms of the Maw treats this situation with gravitas, taking a moment to demonstrate how shaken Marge is by her mugging. It's heartbreaking how she returns to the car in a daze and immediately breaks down. There's a lot of melancholy moments of Marge sitting quietly by herself in the basement. I really like the design choice to have her attacker wearing a goofy hat. It's a nice juxtaposition of silly childlike elements with a character like this. They do a nice job of keeping this scene relatively brief and not dwelling on it or anything. This is a Simpsons episode still, not 6 Feet Under. He just rips her pearls and leaves. The absence of Marge's necklace is a smart visual touch, immediately conveying to the audience that Marge is different now. She looks weirdly naked without the pearls. It's quite unsettling how such a slight model change can mess with our senses so much. In general, I think they do a good job balancing this heavy story concept with lighter jokes. The Rainer Wolfcastle auction sets things up well and contains some amusing moments. I really love the Tetris joke in particular. I always kind of forget that it's in this episode. After the mugging happens, they do stuff like recreating the Quickie Mart, with Bart doing a poo impression and Lisa being stuck as the news rep. And then Homer completely mucking up his attempt to calm down Marge. And then there's the whole air hockey thing. It's not the funniest episode in the world, but the jokes generally land as a whole. A lot of good stuff in here. I also really like how they integrate the weights into the story, buying them in the opening set piece and then just kind of forgetting about them until later. The Rainer Wolfcastle thing doesn't directly link into the mugging, other than getting Homer out of the way. They don't always connect back to the opening set piece in a meaningful way, so I really like how this one came together. Probably the most refreshing thing about this episode is that Marge gets to empower herself. She starts weightlifting almost out of boredom, but you can kind of wrap your mind around how she could find quiet comfort in that solitary activity. Lifting weights is something Marge can control. I like that Marge can prove to herself that she is strong and can overcome her environment. Obviously, after such an experience, seeking therapy or counseling could help Marge significantly, but I also like the portrayal that Marge is able to find her inner strength. I don't know, I might be overemphasizing this aspect. It's just that the show kind of beats up Marge sometimes, and doesn't really give her enough chances to shine. This is around where my compliments for this episode ends, because I really hate where they decide to go afterwards. I can get behind the idea of Marge, even after getting buff and muscular, to be overcompensating, because logically she doesn't want to feel afraid anymore, which implies that she's still not completely over her attack or something. But it's not really portrayed that way. They get the attacker out of the way almost immediately, and his memory doesn't really haunt Marge anymore. It reads more as Marge just suddenly becoming obsessed with getting super muscular and taking steroids. The introspection is gone, whisked away by a few punches. The closest thing we get to that is her freak out at Moe's at the end. And while I do love any chance to break out the adagio for strings, her roid rage is so disconnected with her original attack, it comes off as more random and arbitrary. Marge doing steroids doesn't say anything about Marge as a character. Now, I've never seen that SpongeBob episode that's like this one, but it does have a lot in common with an old Hey Arnold short from back in the day. In that episode, Arnold gets mugged by some guy and his grandma teaches him karate as self-defense. Then he starts defending his classmates and stuff. But then he, gasp, starts going too far and eventually beats up this random guy just asking for directions. The whole thing is a pretty simplistic progression of events. It's a show aimed at kids after all. But what works about the Hey Arnold episode is that they keep connecting his motivations together. He keeps vowing to get back at that guy. Everything flows, the character turn is understood by the audience. I don't think the episode necessarily has to be structured in only this manner. I don't think it was necessarily wrong to get Marge's attacker out of the way early. They just needed to do a better job of keeping him around as a motivating idea. Marge's decision to take steroids should clearly be motivated by her past events, not because random muscular Ruth Powers says they're cool. In fact, I don't really like the steroids in this episode at all. I think steroids as a plot element are a little cheap. What is the final message gonna be? That people shouldn't take steroids? Okay, way to step out on a limb. I think a more vanilla message of Marge taking her hobby too far and losing connection with Homer would be just as effective and more relatable in general. We wouldn't get cringy scenes of Marge, raping Homer, and then Homer commenting how much shaving Marge needs to do for the following morning. That is something I don't need in my life. The joke is obviously meant to play off of reverse gender dynamics. It's just really depressing and uncomfortable seeing a loving couple reduced to this. It's a very rare appearance of jerk-ass Marge, and it took steroids to get her there. Now, I'll grant them that the bodybuilding competition has some funny jokes, like the talent competition with the piano and Marge's muscular ears. I think the bodybuilding angle is a little off-putting in general because the model changes can be a little weird to look at after a while. I don't know, I'm kind of mixed on this topic in particular. I think there's good satire here and they hit on a lot of it. It just feels like a disconnected topic for a family sitcom to cover. And for The Simpsons' 300th episode, no less. No wonder they fudged it and made the Tony Hawk episode number 300 instead. So yeah, I think this is one of those where they just went too far with the concept. But I really do think there's a gold nugget idea in here. I don't want to turn the show into a sappy Lifetime movie or something, but there is a real chance to say something interesting about Marge here, and still frame it in that ironic and funny Simpsons way. I think there's still some fun to be had in Marge becoming obsessive about exercising, they just didn't stop when they probably should have. It's a shame. I still find something compelling about Strong Arms of the Maw, and I think it's definitely worth rewatching, but overall, I guess I find it more interesting than good.